Welcome back to the podcast. Today I have Sarah Gigante with me. She's a pro female cyclist for AG Insurance Soudal. She's recently just come off Tour de France Femmes, where she placed 7th overall, which is amazing to hear. So welcome today, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be on.
Yeah, very welcome. So we've known each other a couple of years because you were actually in my research study for my doctorate way back in 2019, just before you signed your first contract with Tibco, I think.
Yeah, crazy to think about. So 5 years ago, I certainly didn't know so much about cycling nutrition compared to now, especially with AG Insurance Soudal and doing my first Grand Tours this year. I did the Vuelta and then the Tour de France, and yeah, it's just crazy and awesome how scientific they are.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. So, do you have a lot of support, and they've been really able to help you with your nutrition during the races and in training?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the whole attitude towards fueling is super positive, and that's the whole goal during training, so that we can train well, recover well, stay healthy. But also in racing, it's so important for performance. And yeah, I mean, the tour only finished about a week ago, so it's still fresh in my mind. But the protocols were really quite intense. A lot of food to eat, but then they also did the best they could to make sure that we wanted to keep eating. So we had a team chef for the very first time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he was awesome. So he came with a little van and he drove around to each of our hotels, which was a long way actually, because we started in the Netherlands, went to Belgium, and then finished in France. So he had his van, and every time we got to the hotel, he'd be there outside in his van making dinner for us, so that as soon as we finished our massages, we could have dinner. But already by then, you start the day with breakfast, then you have some pre-race snacks on the bus, like rice cakes, or in my case, I really, really like the 60 peanut butter bar. So pretty much every race. I also like the chocolate bar though, so pretty much every
that's your standard go-to pre-race snack.
I had one chocolate bar and one peanut butter bar because I didn't like choosing, so I just had one of each before each stage. And then we also had like beetroot shots, little nitrate. Then in the race, we have a few options with the team, but most of us were drinking the isotonic drink with 32 grams of carbs rather than a higher carb version, just because it was pretty hot. So we also wanted to drink a little bit, and so lots of iso drink. That's what we call it, and gels. I like energy fruit, like little gummy bars rather than gels. I still had some gels, but normally when it was more frantic, or I guess towards the end of the tour, when I started to get more and more serious, and I was just like, I don't care what I eat, I just want to go up this mountain fast. And actually I packed more gels, I noticed, compared to at the start. Then I started with like the energy fruit things, but you had to unwrap them more, a bit harder.
So the little dynamics of the challenges eating and drinking on the bike.
The weather, like on the rainy day, then, or if there was any wind, there wasn't luckily, but on the rainy day, I was definitely having more iso and gels rather than things that needed unwrapping. And then, straight after the stage, then our Sonia at the finish line would be there for us with like cherry juice straight away, like within 30 seconds of finishing. Then we go to the bus. We have a recovery meal made for us by the team chef, which changed, but normally pasta or rice with different meats, but nothing too heavy, mainly chicken, pretty much. But then even that, for example, as the race went on, then we got a little bit less into eating it, but we still knew we had to eat. So sometimes people started to like pack their own food. Like I really, really liked porridge, so I
remember that.
I started to bring porridge for after the race. Just if I wasn't feeling really hungry, then I would just say, okay, chocolate. flavored porridge. I can make this work.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember back in 2019, the study or the race that you were doing before. It was, I think, Tour of Tasmania, and some days you'd have porridge for breakfast and then porridge for your like lunch before you race, because you know that it works. Yeah, but this is, you find what works for you and what makes you feel good, and you race on it well, and you're comfortable in it, and then it's easy to sort of stick with. But I mean, that sounds like you guys are fueling really, really well before, during, and after each of those stages. Do you record it while you're there, or do you sort of just estimate it?
Yeah, I was keeping track, just roughly. Obviously, like, we're not the ones cooking the meals, and plus we need our brain power for the racing. But yeah, I was making sure, definitely sit down beforehand and think, okay, like, how long's the race? How many grams per hour? How many grams total is that? How much am I going to get from like drink versus gels versus bars versus rice cakes? So yeah, I think it was, for me, I find that quite necessary. Otherwise, I'll just easily end up not eating enough, because you have to eat more than what you think is enough.
Yeah. And so do you have a particular target that you have in mind for during the race, for example?
Yeah, I think it was definitely dependent on like how good I was getting things out of my pocket. Like, some races I would take I've seen it on Instagram. I think you shared it once. Like, don't be that person that takes your bars for a ride around the countryside and then brings it home. That's me sometimes. So sometimes I didn't quite finish my pockets, but always at least 90 grams an hour and up to 120.
Okay, that's amazing. Do you want to take a stab at a guess of what you were having back in 2019? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but I remember it was bad. I did your survey afterwards, and I had no clue about any of the answers. No, I would guess very low. I mean, at least the races were short, but it was still not enough. I don't know, like 30 or something crazy.
Close to, I think you're having about 40 grams an hour during the race, but I think that's fantastic to see that you've been like building it up, and that you've learnt the tools that, as you said, if you don't plan it in advance, you're probably not going to eat enough. So it's like planning it and anticipating it, and then if you don't quite hit that target, at least you've got it available to go through. But that's a huge improvement in your feeling. Do you notice the difference now compared to, if you think back to how you were racing a few years ago, because you're fueling so much more?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to compare directly because I'm doing
different
a lot of
races.
things
Different races, yeah.
Yeah, also, I think I won the Tour of Tasmania that year, but I did not win the Tour de France. But yeah, very different quality field. Yeah, I definitely notice it in training. I think that's where it's easiest to notice, just because you can repeat the same session, and one day or 1 year you don't do it field, and then you start feeling it better. And when I learnt how much you had to eat on the bike, then that was what I noticed most. Just that my fourth max effort would still be maybe not exactly the same as my first, but I could back it up and it would still be within a few watts of my first effort. Whereas before, I could do good efforts, so mainly the first one or two, and then I would get tired.
Coming down.
Or even before 2019, when I was a teenager, and I really didn't know, like, 40 grams was good compared to when I was younger, and I just had no clue, like, stick a banana in your back pocket and off you go. And I honestly didn't know how people rode for more than 3 hours. Like, I would try it, and every time I would end up, like, I didn't know what bonking was, but I'm sure I was bonked. I'd, like, be on the side of the road, have to call my mum, like, Mama, I just can't get home. I don't know why. And it's crazy to think about now, like, doing the Saturday bunch ride, and I honestly found it so hard to get home. Like, I would get home most of the time. I didn't like having to call my mum, but I would like crawl by the end and feel so dead. And then when I realized you just had to eat more, you can do 4 hours and feel like, I'm always annoying my coach because I'm like, 4 hours, can I do more? And then the next day I feel like the same as if I didn't do it. Not quite the same, but like in the Tour de France, I could back up day after day and keep getting good power numbers, and that was really important because for me the best stage was the last stage. So even though the earlier stages weren't my thing. I made sure to fuel super, super well.
Well, you're not going to get there if you don't.
Exactly.
If you're not fueled enough, then you're not able to compete. And it was interesting watching. I mean, I wasn't there in person this year, but watching the women that were racing this year, there didn't seem to be as much fatigue visible compared to last year, where it was really evident some of that fatigue when you got to the Tourmalet and that final climb. So it was, I think perhaps there's probably been a big shift in the peloton where more women are fueling at a higher level and then seeing the improvements in their training quality, their racing quality, and be able to just back up day after day after day.
Yeah, for sure. I think at least from the people I've been around, everyone it's completely normal to eat up to 120 grams, or some people even eat more. And that's just normal. Whereas I remember at the Kidal Evans Great Ocean Road Race in 2020, and I had just started learning more. I think it was just a few months after I did the study with you. So, and I had just gotten onto Chipco, so I was getting a bit better with knowing to eat more. Still not like amazing. Like I feel like I'm much more on top of it now, but I was definitely better, and I had packed 70 grams per hour for Kidals, which is about, I think it's 100, or it was 120 kilometers, so 3.5 hours maybe. And another rider said to me, "Oh, are you going on a safari? Why do you need so many gels?" And I was like, it's 70 grams per hour. It's like, I've been told that's what I should try and do. And like, she was laughing at me. Whereas now, if you were in a world tour race, no one would bat an eye. Or if you told them you were only eating 70 grams an hour, then they'd be like, I can beat you.
It's interesting how the culture and the people that you're around make such an impact on what you do. And so I see that a lot, where people, if they're with riders and other people that aren't eating and training, and that's the norm, then you assume that that's what you also meant to do. Even if you feel really rubbish, you feel really tired, but then if you're in an environment of really supportive people, of like encouraging you to eat and drink more and to fuel more, and then you see the benefit, then you're more likely to do what the people around you are doing. And so I think that's how the culture, it's certainly shifting, but it takes time to shift, and it makes it easier if you're around people that are also encouraging you to feel more, compared to that person who was like, oh, you don't need it. But
especially if you're, I'm not one of the youngest riders anymore, but when you are one of the youngest or the newest riders in a team or in a group ride or whatever it is, you kind of take the cues from the people around you, or maybe they're stronger than you or older or more experienced, so then you think they know, but maybe they don't know, or maybe they do know but they don't want to do it. So it is definitely awesome to be on a team where everyone like super on top of it. And
and it's great that you've got a chef as well, because a lot of women's teams, they don't have that available, and it makes a big difference if you've got like food that you want to eat or good quality ingredients, or it's available at a time that suits better recovery, versus like you finish the stage and you've got a 2-hour, 3-hour drive to get to the next hotel or whatever it is. So I think that's fantastic.
I think a few years ago, hardly any women's teams had a chef, and then even last year, maybe more than half didn't. But apparently at the Giro, all the World Tour teams, apart from us, this is what my teammates said, so maybe they're biased, but they were complaining. They said pretty much all of the World Tour teams had a chef. So it's pretty amazing how fast it's progressing, and how important all the teams now know nutrition is. And it is also, it's not just like what we have available to eat. Like I remember at the Vuelta, sometimes like most of the hotels were good because most of them had buffets, and then it's easy. You go pile on the rice and grab some protein. But a couple of them were hotels where you just order off a menu, and like they brought us some pasta, but with lots of maybe creamy sauce, and you don't want to try something totally new, or you want more pasta and less sauce, or you have to wait ages for them to bring out the protein separately. So that was also really good, having the timing completely nailed for as soon as we finished massage, then we can go. But already by then we've been pretty much eating non-stop since the race finished. So, and also Tom was really good. he knew that we were eating so much. I think I looked at my training peaks just before this call, and I had 19,000 kilojoules of work done for the 7 days, and a normal training week would be 12 to 16. I think 16 was my biggest in a while. So
it's a big
and it's
week.
also harder at a race. I feel like it's harder to eat as much because you're so busy. I don't know where the time goes, but compared to if I do a 4-hour ride at home, then I have most of the day still. Whereas if I do a 4-hour race, then it's like by the time you go to the race and you pack your suitcase, go to the race, do the presentation and sign on, line up early, do the actual race, and stuff around at the finish, wait for everyone to shower, go back, unpack your suitcase, have a massage. I don't do all those things at home, so you actually run out of time quite quickly compared to at home. I feel like I have more time to eat, and also 19,000 is quite a big jump up. So
it's not something you can just play catch up on, which is why like that fueling during those races is so important, and that the bigger breakfast, the extra snacks before, the extra snacks afterwards, so that you're not then getting to dinner and trying to eat 2,000 calories to catch up for what's happened earlier in the day.
Yeah, and you also have to think about your sleep as well. Like not only would that not be as good for your performance and recovery, but it would also affect your sleep, which affects your performance and recovery in a different way as well. I think what I stopped halfway through my sentence, but Tom, the chef, was so good at knowing that because we were eating so much, like I think about 5,000 calories a day on average for the week. Then, and actually I'm one of the smaller riders, so probably the other riders with higher power eating even more than that. So he knew we were, kind of force feeding ourselves at times. So it would make the food more and more appealing. Like at the start of the week, he's like, "Oh, just wait, like the dessert's going to get better and better each day." And it did. Like we had fruit salad before the race, and then by the end of the race it was like really good apple crumbles and things like that.
Well, that's it. Like, I think sometimes people like label these foods like, oh no, I can't eat it. But there's a time and a place, and if you've got such high energy expenditures, which some people might be doing with their training loads, or if you've got a really big training week, you go altitude block or something, you need extra food, and trying to eat it just from your main meal can be a challenge. So then use your juices, your smoothies, the desserts as a way to sort of help support and get enough food in and keep it interesting, so that you don't get bored just eating chicken and rice every day.
Yeah, I had my porridge every morning just because I'm a creature of habit with that. But one of my teammates, she started out eating, I don't know, muesli or something. But then by the end of the week, then she got Tom to make a special smoothie. So all she had to do was, she knew roughly how many carbs, grams of carbs were in this bit, and then she just had to drink the bit, and just like drinking energy drink on the bike. So then it was easier for her. That was her job. Just finish the bit and then you're done. So it's definitely a time and a place. I remember my coach Dylan came to Girona before the tour, and we were riding early in the morning to beat the heat. So sometimes we would make sure we were going by, it's not super early, not like Australian bungee standards, but early for Girona. So we leave by 6:30 or 7.
It's very early for Girona standards.
Very early for Girona.
Anything before 10, early.
And I was still having my porridge. That's definitely the theme of this podcast. But Dylan, he was making porridge, and then he wouldn't finish it all. And I'm like, why do you, like, you pour it all in your bowl and then you don't finish it? He's like, oh, but I'm not hungry in the morning. I'm like, well, why are you eating porridge? Like, go buy some Cocoa Pops or something. And he did. And then he could, like, because he had to do my training with me. Like, I needed him to be on good
come
form.
on, like, catch up, keep up.
We need to have big breakfast. And once he switched to Cocoa Pops, then he could eat like way more carbs without feeling like he was feeling sick.
That's interesting. I just did a call today, or it answered a question. Someone was asking about oats, particularly about like how long it takes to digest, and the difference between like quick oats or rolled oats. And that was even interesting, like exploring that, well, if you've got like the quick oats, or they've been blitzed to a powder and has been cooked more, then yeah, you might be able to absorb that a bit better and a bit faster than the rolled oats. But there's still a lot of fiber and a bit more protein and fat in them compared to like, yeah, the Cocoa Pops or the rice bubbles. So then for some people, it's going to make them feel super full. But as you say, you've been doing this for years. You like it. It makes you happy. It's not just fuel. It's comfort food and it makes you happy as well, which is super important for your food.
Yeah, and especially for the split stage, we don't often have them in UCI races. I remember we had it in juniors a lot. But yeah, it was definitely weird doing a double day. And I think that was one day that's when I started. I mean, this is day 2, so I didn't make it long without porridge in the afternoon. But that's when I started bringing my porridge because I thought, I don't want to have, like, I always have porridge before a race. Not always. Sometimes I do the low residue. But normally I have porridge before a training session or before a race. Yeah. So I was like, I don't want to just like try chicken curry before the time.
Again, if you know it works for you, like this is the whole point of you test it and explore and you play around with it in training when it's like a low risk or it's a low pressure scenario. So then you get clear, like, okay, this works for me or it doesn't. Do you find that you, like you say, you've got the gels, you've got the drinks and things when you're racing, but do you use the same stuff when you're training, or do you make your own stuff or use something different when you're training then now?
I use the 60 energy fruit things the most. Yeah. So
those jellies.
Jellies, like lollies but in a bar almost.
Yeah.
I still tell myself one day I'm going to make rice cakes, and it's getting more and more tempting, or I guess it's not tempting is not the right word, because it's not like it's something I want to do and I'm trying not to do it. It's the opposite. So
it's like, it's so much effort. It's so hard.
The barrier to making rice cakes is getting lower because I've seen those nice new rice bubble Cocoa Pop style ones, and I've been watching. What's that Instagram account? One of the
Pocket Fuel. Pocket Fuel with Lizzie Holden and Nick Schultz.
Exactly. I did her page and I'm like, oh, that looks really good. And I still haven't made it.
Because they're super easy to make. Like all you need, like marshmallow. I think in Girona, the biggest challenge is the marshmallows, and getting good marshmallows can be a bit.
Really?
You probably have to go to Hippocor or something like this because not all the supermarkets have. They will have that weird, I don't know, some weird pink flowery coloured ones instead of normal, like the big fluffy ones that we used to seeing.
I didn't realise. I miss custard is what I miss in Spain.
Oh, you have to come visit me in Mallorca, because I found there's a shop here, a Vegemite custard. It's got all the stuff. I went into town when I discovered. I was like, these things that you can't get on the mainland, and they have them in Mallorca. This is great.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. LCMs and custard as soon as I get home.
But LCMs, that's what these Rice Krispie bars are.
Exactly.
But it's one of those things that once you do it and you've made it once, you're like, why was I like avoiding this? This is so easy. It's so quick. You can make them in like 10 minutes, but it's just got to get the ingredients and
now I have someone do it. Box of 60 products, so that's even easier. All I have to do is reach in.
Well, I think that's the thing. A lot of times with sports nutrition, people just go for convenience, but you can. I think it's easy to get bored of eating the same thing if you're having training 15, 20, 30 hours a week, and if you can mix and match it, then it's super handy. But the Rice Krispie cakes are good because then they're lighter in volume compared to like a rice cake, but they're not super sweet, and they freeze well. So I can highly recommend making them.
Alex Swanee makes them now because Anya, my teammate Anya, showed him the Pocket Fuel recipe. So
I think it's like spreading throughout the whole peloton. Like, so that everyone's swapped from like rice cakes and then getting all their Swanees to make the Rice Krispie cakes instead.
Yeah, seriously. Maybe this is interesting. Where did I put it? I have a Google Doc. I wrote down I ate in the tour.
Ooh,
24 bidons of ISO, 18 gels, they're 45 grams each.
Yeah.
And 17 energy fruit. And then I also ate 13 bars, they're about 30 grams.
Yeah.
That's half peanut butter and half chocolate because I'm indecisive.
Well, these were the ones you had them before, or was this what you had during?
The bars were all before, actually. The others all during. And then 1 rice cake.
Yep.
not many. And 7 of the beetroot shots. So there you go. Fun facts.
Nice. I'll have to write that all out and be like, this is what fueled Sarah on Tour de France Fun. But yeah, like, I think that was pretty cool seeing you finish in the top 10. Very sure you're very proud of yourself for how you managed to pull
Yeah,
off
thank
that
you.
race.
It was, yeah, really good, and definitely I couldn't have done it without fueling from, well, not even day one. From a few days out, I was already starting to carb load. So yeah, it is.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. So here's another one we can compare to the blast of the past. Like, what are you aiming for when you're carb loading these days?
Yeah, about 10 to 12 grams per kilo of body weight of carb.
Yeah. So it's about 500, 600, somewhere around that sort of mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Do you want to guess what you're having back in the day?
I have no idea.
I think back then you were having about 200, just shy of 200, 220 grams the day before.
I don't know how I got that QOM.
But again, I think it's cool to see how you've grown and you've developed and you've increased, and how it's helped your performance and helped, and because it's something I see a lot with a lot of riders at all levels, amateur to elite, where perhaps when they're starting, if they don't have the support or the people around them encouraging them to eat enough or to eat
the
more.
knowledge.
Or the knowledge, yeah.
Even just having like the products in the back of the bus, and we can just go there and take as many as we like. I mean,
and be encouraged to do that as well, because I know some teams and some riders that are in teams where they're rationed and they're having to like almost like hide food or sneak food just to get the food that they know that they need to support their training. And so I think it's really powerful. It's not just knowledge, but it's also the environment and being able to put it into practice and know what's in food as well. What do you like when you're carb loading? Like, how do you like use things like juice, or what sort of things do you change when you're doing a carb load now?
No, I don't change too much unless I'm specifically trying to do lower fiber. Like if I have a mountain the next day, maybe for Ramadi, I'll try and do more white rice and less oats. But I guess I just eat a lot of volume, but also rather than, I already do this, but just more extreme. Rather than 3 big meals, then I'll just have like 5 or 6 meals.
Yeah.
So I just kind of
spread it
eat
out
all day. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a big difference, making it easier, because if you, like you're saying before about the sleep, if you leave it all to dinner time, then you go to bed be like, oh, I'm so full, whereas you spread it out and it doesn't.
Yeah, and it's just unpleasant as well. Then you feel like, oh, do I really have to eat this much? Like, I don't feel like it. Whereas if you just make sure to visit the Swanee and hi Peter, can I have more food again, please?
Yeah. Do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd want to share about fueling, or what's changed that you'd like to share with other people listening along?
Just always don't be afraid to eat more than you think is necessary, because you'll just be healthier and be stronger. And it's amazing how much you can eat on and off the bike if you work up to it. Just take it in baby steps. Like, don't go from never eating anything to trying to eat 120 grams an hour, because then you might feel really sick and not want to ever eat again on the bike. But if you just work your way up slowly, then normally the gut adapts pretty well and you'll be flying before you know it.
Amazing. Fantastic advice. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your nutrition wisdom with us, Sarah.
I have one more tip as well.
Oh yeah.
Don't stop eating near the end of your ride. I think a lot of people do that. Like, oh, it's only 30 minutes till I get home. I'll just wait till I have lunch or whatever meal. Our sports scientist was telling us at the tour, he said, I know Tom's cooking is really delicious and maybe even more delicious than the peanut butter energy bars when you've already had 10 of them. But then it takes more glycogen out of your muscles, apparently. So it will like really hinder your performance the next day, compared to if you eat all the way up to the line and then still eat a lot off the bike. But eating all the way up to the end of your ride is really important, especially if you have a fast turnaround and want to train well the next day.
Absolutely. Like optimizing every opportunity to recover and to refuel, rather than emptying the tank and needing more time and more food to sort of catch up. So fantastic tips and fantastic advice for anyone listening along. Thank you again. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, fuel your ride, and I will see you next time.
Thank you, Gemma.